A very good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to today's webinar. My name is Simrit Kaur, and I work as a research associate at Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. Today's webinar is being hosted by India Cooling Coalition, which is a multi-stakeholder group of 20 organizations that are extensively engaged in sustainable cooling research and application. By bringing together representation from non-profits, academic and research institutions, and industry associations, India Cooling Coalition aims to enhance access to affordable and sustainable cooling and fast-track implementation of India Cooling Action Plan to ensure thermal comfort, health, and food security for all. Today's webinar is the first in the two-part webinar series on accelerating the uptake of energy-efficient space cooling appliances. India is a predominantly warm country with rising expectations and increasing need for cooling and thermal comfort. Currently, the space cooling requirement in India is mostly met by fans and desert coolers. While the current penetration of ECs in India is relatively low, an increase in purchasing power and urbanization will lead to a sharp growth in the market for ACs in the coming years. And if unchecked, the rise in the number of space cooling appliances in the coming years will lead to an unsustainable rise in energy usage of the country, as well as greater strain over the power systems of India. So improvements in energy efficiency of space cooling appliances is one of the strategic ways to optimizing the rising cooling demand in India. Today's discussion will focus on the topic of ramping up the uptake of star-labeled cooling appliances from the consumer and utility perspective. In the second part of this webinar series, which is scheduled for next week on 11th November, industry and policy initiatives for star-labeled cooling appliances will be discussed. Some of the themes of today's discussion with our esteemed panel is understanding, firstly, the trends in purchasing patterns and usage patterns of space cooling appliances in India. Then secondly, what is the grid impact of space cooling appliance usage? And then thirdly, what can be some of the recommendations for steering consumer behavior and ramping up the uptake of efficient cooling appliances? Today's session will be moderated by Dr. Satish Kumar. Dr. Kumar serves as the President and Executive Director at Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. He has been working for building a culture of energy efficiency in India by advocating thermal comfort for all as a development model and the lean, mean, green philosophy to design and construct net zero energy built environment. For the panel discussion, we have with us eminent speakers from research field as well as utilities. Firstly, we have Dr. Anna Agarwal from Center for Policy Research. Anna is a fellow at CPR's initiative on climate, energy, and environment. And her research focuses on understanding India's energy demand transitions and identifying ways to lock in low carbon energy consumption patterns for the long term. Then we have Ms. Shalu Agrawal, who is a program lead at Council on Energy, Environment and Water. Ms. Shalu's research focuses on understanding the residential electricity use and consumption patterns in India with the help of surveys and smart metering devices. We also have Mr. Abhishek Ranjan. Mr. Abhishek has about 2 decades of experience in power and information technology sectors in India. He is currently leading a team in the areas of energy efficiency and demand-side management, renewable integration and rooftop solar, grid-level energy storage solutions, EV charging infrastructure, power scheduling and demand forecasting at BSES Rajdhani Power Limited. Then we have with us Mr. Jitendra Nalwaya. Mr. Nalwaya is the Vice President at BSES Yamuna Power Limited. He has more than 25 years of professional experience in the field of business development, operations, innovation, strategy, and collaborations in oil and gas, power, and infrastructure sector. And lastly, we have Ms. Dipanvita Ray from Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited. She is currently heading consumer experience management for 1.7 million customers at Tata Power. In this role, apart from being in constant touch with customers and actively addressing their needs, she is also involved in digitalization exercise and in bringing new concepts and technologies to enhance customer convenience. I would like to thank all the speakers for joining in for today's discussion. We are delighted to have you here. Given the diverse background and rich experience of the speakers that we have with us today, I'm sure that today's discussion will be riveting and insightful. So without any further ado, I'll now request Dr. Satish Kumar to kindly take over and moderate today's panel discussion. Over to you, Dr. Satish.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thanks a lot, Simrat, for providing the background and context. As Simrat mentioned, I am delighted to be moderating this panel on behalf of the India Cooling Coalition, which is a group of 20 non-profit research academic organizations working on implementation of India Cooling Action Plan. And I cannot be more excited and thrilled to have such a good group of panelists, both representing the research community as well as the utility and the distribution company, because both these groups are extremely important in terms of how India is going to address its cooling related requirements in the face of a warming planet, and also I think rising customer or consumer expectations, as well as the quality of life aspirations that Indians are looking forward to. So Simrat has already introduced the panelists, so I think my job is fairly easy. Before I start, I do want to highlight a few things here. While this India Cooling Coalition members have come together because of their common interest in addressing the challenges that India faces, as well as I think the solutions that these organizations believe they can come up with through the work that they are doing. Just I think in terms of the ecosystem level, I would like to highlight that we have Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and they have a pretty successful and robust standards and labeling program. And some of the discussions that we are going to have is inevitably going to talk about those things. And on behalf of ICC, I'm a little disappointed. I think we were hoping to have Mr. Samir Pandita, who is the director who is in charge of the standards and labeling program at the Bureau of Energy Efficiency. But there was a meeting that came up at the very last moment, which forced him to regret. Otherwise, we would have heard directly from him. But let's turn that into an opportunity. I think we will have probably 10-15 minutes of extra time to discuss and share our perspectives in terms of the work and the insights that all of you, I think, as esteemed panelists, would want to share. And we would also like to have some Q&A from the audience that has assembled to hear to all of you. So, so I talked about the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, its S&L program. We are all also aware about Energy Efficiency Services Limited and the unique business model that it uses to scale up the programs, and which has the ability to execute fairly large scale energy efficiency programs. And some of the cooling appliances that we are going to be talking about, whether it's fans or whether it's room air conditioners, clearly are, I think, within the crosshairs of ESL, and they already have some of these programs that they are looking to implement and scale up. And as Simrat mentioned, we will be hearing from ESL in the part 2 of the this panel discussion that India Cooling Coalition is organizing. The third piece is the India Cooling Action Plan, and which is looking at the cooling issue holistically and creating opportunities at the ecosystem level. And of course, India Cooling Coalition has been established to help with the implementation of India Cooling Action Plan, and the fact that we already have 20 organizations which are working on different aspects of the cooling and refrigeration policy related issues or market issues is just a testament to how critical this particular issue is. And the fourth piece that I just want to touch upon is the presence of the importance of the private sector, and particularly in this panel, we are fortunate to have representatives from all the three discoms from Delhi, and I am really looking forward to hearing their perspectives, because they also have a lot of experience in terms of launching programs uh, for cooling appliances, and also the fact that because they interact with the consumers directly, so they can get to see, I think, what the needs and the requirements or pain points of customers are, and where discoms can actually work with them to help them out. So with that context, I'm going to dive into the questions that I'm going to be posing to these panelists, and these are essentially, I think, some trigger points. Not and I'm sure that with the experience and with the recent work that has been going on at each of these organizations, you will probably have some other things that you may feel germane or relevant for the audience and for your fellow panelists as well. So I'm going to start with the two, maybe the research entities first, because I believe that will also set the context for some of the interventions that we are expecting to hear from the Delhi Discom senior folks who are present as panelists. So Anna, I'm going to start with you, and um, we know that Center for Policy Research is working on cooling related issues, I think, pretty intensively, and especially some of the work that you have done with the consumer related surveys, and finding what their preferences are, and how India's policy is sort of influencing consumer behavior. That's going to be very, very interesting and of great interest to all of us. So I have maybe a couple of questions that I just want to pose in front of you, and you can try to, I think, limit your initial interventions to maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and would appreciate if all of us can stick with that time, because I don't want that. I think people coming first has some kind of a time advantage, and people coming in the end are pressed for time. So would really appreciate that. And if I have some follow-up questions, which I probably will have, so I will come back once again and give an opportunity for a follow-up questions before opening the discussions for some of the questions that we will receive from the audience. So so Anna, what are some of the main attributes that a consumer tends to consider while purchasing a cooling appliance such as an air conditioner? And this is based on, I think, the work that I'm asking you. And in that same context, how effective do you feel from the work that you have done has the star labeling program been in ramping up the uptake of energy efficient appliance in the past few years? And also, I think, in the same vein, how can the labeling program maybe made more robust? We know that it has had some stellar successes, and it has really helped, I think, Indian consumers a great deal. But I think we are not satisfied with anything good, so we want to make it, I think, really excellent or outstanding. So we would like to hear your thoughts in terms of how to ensure that energy efficiency becomes an important parameter in consumer decision making. So I know that I think I have a bunch of questions here, and also I think one other is related to the price part, because I know that many of us are interested in that. So in the surveys and in the interactions that you have had with the consumers, where do you see the higher price of a star labeled appliance? Is that the only deterrent stopping consumers from purchasing energy efficient appliance? Or do you feel that the role that information and awareness has also an important role to play in inducing consumer behavior and nudging them towards energy efficient purchase of energy efficient appliances. And in that sense, what are some of like the economic incentives and information provision which you think can be motivators that can steer them in that direction? So maybe I think these are 5, 6, I think issues that I've just laid it out. You can pick and choose, I think, which you feel, I think you would like to cover based on the work that CPR has done. So over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Satish, and thanks, Simrat, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for joining in. It's a pleasure to be part of this discussion today. So Satish, thanks for these questions. Maybe I'll give sort of quick observations based on our work on and try to hit all of them briefly. So the first thing is, what does a consumer sort of look for when they are trying to buy an appliance like air conditioner? So what we found was the company brand was the key factor which influenced the selection of a particular AC a consumer would buy, followed by the features an AC has to offer. So does it have a remote? Does it have a heating mode? That was the second most important factor. Very few people said that the star rating itself guided the decision on the type of AC people buy, possibly hinting towards a low priority towards this attribute when people go and buy an AC. Your next question was more broader about how effective star labeling programs are, and as you mentioned, we've seen great successes. Just to answer this question, I would say that where the labels are mandatory, so for example, refrigerators, air conditioners, we do see most households have a rated appliance. 3-star is most common. I think a number of studies, including that is being done by CW, CPR, and AAA, show that 5-star has a lower penetration. Of course, more can be done to drive adoption of more efficient appliances. But I think the place where labels are voluntary. So if you talk about fans, very few households have a rated fan. So I think something can be done there. Of course, in appliances like coolers, where currently rating does not exist, what we find is that most coolers that households own are these locally assembled ones. I think 90% of the coolers we find amongst households in Delhi are not branded. And assuming that hints towards the lower efficiency of these appliances, I think something can be done there too. Talking about sort of what motivates people to buy a higher efficient appliance or why people go for a lower star rating. Of course, price is the single most important factor, which people say why they bought a lower efficient appliance. Second factor we find is lower availability of more efficient appliances. As a thing, people say why they could not buy a 4-star or say a 5-star AC. And the other factor which we find is a key driver and influences efficiency purchase is levels of awareness. And that ties into sort of the last point you said was, what role does awareness play? And we find that people who are more aware of energy efficiency schemes, have seen labels on their appliances, know what they mean, are more likely to go for a more efficient air conditioner. What we also find is, related to that people who already own a rated fan, which is about 7% in our study when we look at households in Delhi, are also more likely to own a more efficient air conditioner, sort of saying that people who are more aware of such programs, have made prior investments, are more likely to do so in future. Is my time up, or can I go on for a little?
No, you can go ahead for 1 or 2 more minutes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So very quickly, sort of trying to sum up with some points of interventions that can be done to drive the uptake of energy efficient appliances. So first, talking about the key deterrent, the cost. So what we also find is that a lot of ACs are bought in installments. So innovative financing mechanisms that help people replace inefficient air conditioners and help them buy more efficient ones can help drive purchase of more efficient appliances. Second is tied to availability and sort of role of the retailer plays. So retail shops are the most common place where people buy their cooling appliances, and I think a retailer can play a key influence in not just guiding the decision, but making available a wider range of efficient appliances, which could also help overall uptake. Third, and I think my co-panelists from utilities can speak more to this, use of efficient appliance once it is bought would ultimately guide what is the final energy use. So some innovative pricing mechanisms, time of day pricing, peak time rebates could also help in the overall sort of trying to lock in low carbon thermal comfort. Particularly since we find that the time where people use their AC most is when they sleep, which is the night time, followed by the afternoon time, which is the second most popular time people use ACs. So just some thoughts on what can be done to drive purchase of more efficient appliances and then later guiding more efficient use.
Thank you, Anna, so much for, I think, giving pinpointed answers, sharing your insights, I think, in terms of how consumers can be encouraged. And I'm pretty sure that I think some of these themes are going to pop back in when we are hearing from other panelists, and especially from the representatives from Delhi Discoms. So thank you very much. I'm going to move forward to Shalu Agrawal of the Council for Energy, Environment and Water. And while Simrat has provided a little bit of a background for people who may not be aware, Shalu Agrawal has been sort of the primary author of a report that has been based on a fairly large primary survey that CEW conducted, which was a welcome move at an India level, providing some information on how I think Indian customers are using different appliances. I think what are the characteristics that they are looking, what kind of a role energy efficiency is playing. So Shalu, I think not surprising, my questions are going to be related to, I think, your recent survey and study that CW has undertaken. And first of all, thank you very much on behalf of the energy efficiency community for, I think, coming out with such a remarkable survey, which has a lot of very, very useful data points and information that we all can use and benefit from. From, I think, from your vantage point, Shalu, what are the current trends with respect to the usage of cooling appliances in India? I think it's a similar kind of a question that I've asked to Anna also, but I know that both of you have been working with the Indian consumers. And when we talk about that, and including, I think, some of the things that if you have found out about set point temperatures at which ACs are used. And the reason we are asking is that we know that the Ministry of Power has a guideline of 24 degrees Celsius set point temperature. We talk a lot about adaptive thermal comfort requirements, where we are encouraging people to use fans along with ACs to actually help provide thermal comfort at a reduced energy cost. And also, I think in terms of when we are talking about some of these things, what's the duration and timeline of the use of ACs in different climatic zones? So how I think ACs are being used by Indian consumers. I think that's something that we would like to understand if you have a little bit of more detail there. And how are some of these patterns? I'm not sure whether you have asked these questions, but is there something that you can share in terms of what the forecasting may be? And I think this is especially important because I think cooling as an end use is considered to have a disproportionate impact in terms of what kind of electricity demand is going to be created out of that. And also I think in terms of for people who don't have the air conditioners installed, and that's I think close to like maybe 5 to 7% of the households have that. What role passive cooling technologies and appliances which aid in passive cooling designs such as fans and desert coolers have in the technology mix? Because this is again part of the India Cooling Action Plan, and we know fans are a pretty important appliance in their own right in terms of the energy that is consumed by fans. And then the second part is that what should be the strategy in your view for the S&L program to steer consumer behavior towards energy efficient appliance, as well as to ensure access to cooling is enhanced for the economically weaker sections of the society? So again, I'll request you to keep your intervention to 5-6 minutes, and feel free to, I think, pick up one or two or more topics which will allow you to make your point. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Satish, for a very generous, introduction and comment. The idea for doing that kind of survey was also driven largely by the demand that the research community has been putting, and obviously learning from the shorter, more regional specific surveys that have been done in the past. And I'm glad that we have done this exercise. And as Anna has, rightly pointed out, we really have a mix of cooling appliances that are used in the country. And as is commonly understood, fans continue to be the mainstay passive cooling appliance, with more than 90% of Indian homes relying on fans. And this is distantly followed by desert coolers. And we see nearly 12 to 15% homes that we typically understand as middle income homes have desert coolers. And of course, then comes the AC, which is a standard cooling technology, which is currently owned by roughly 5% homes. So, but we also see that over the past decade, if we compare with the NSSO survey that was conducted in 2011, there's been a significant, change in the way appliances are being stocked. Nearly 20% Indian homes have bought their first fans over the past decade, right? And the demand for fans itself is not saturated yet. We're also seeing rising uptake of ACs and coolers, and even the ICAP study projects that the ACs are expected to grow at accelerated pace going forward. Just from our survey itself, we noticed that 80% of AC owners bought their first AC in the last 5 years. So we know that the ones who are coming towards AC technology are really the first time users. And this shows both how we have huge demand coming into the market, but also an opportunity to ensure that the new stock that comes in can be very, very efficient or super efficient. And I'm glad that initiatives like global cooling prices are already on the way, and hoping that we'll have even more newer technologies. Now, coming to the usage front, because personally, I believe we have been doing very well in terms of promoting energy efficient ACs, and that's what our survey also confirms. Majority of consumers who have ACs are aware about star labeling programs. They have rated ACs, even though we can of course improve our efforts in terms of ensuring uptake of, say, inverter technology, or even better technologies are coming on ground. But I think as a community, we should also focus equally on these passive cooling technologies, particularly fans and coolers, which is literally a clean slate right now. We have a voluntary labeling program, and will soon be becoming mandatory in the coming year or so. But I think all the stakeholders here will need to come together. Discoms, manufacturers, the suppliers, the consumers, in terms of accepting more efficient fans, and whatever it takes to get there. On the question of how, of course, as Anna mentioned, it's not just the stock which has to be efficient, because ultimately it's the way that appliance is being used that will determine how energy efficient it ultimately would be. And here I would like to talk about 2-3 points. The first is, of course, the usage hours. From the survey, we observed that typically people currently use ACs, for instance, for 6 hours on average. And the majority of the usage is concentrated towards the evening hours between 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. And in in hot and humid climates or warm climates, we see that the usage is relatively more, is also there significantly during the afternoon hours. But we do see that there is a linkage between usage as well as income. So as we go forward, the temperatures rise, the incomes rise, the usage during the daytime hours and particularly peak hours would also increase. And we all understand how this will increase the traffic on the grid, impact the load curves, the peak demand requirements, and the kind of investment that would entail. So understanding the usage and how is it evolving constantly is also something that we need to do. We just can't rely on the survey responses here because they have their own limitations. We are trying to do it through smart meters, and I will talk more about it later. The second bit is, of course, that the AC energy footprint depends on the temperature set points and the servicing practices that people follow. And we see that, the Ministry of Powers and BEE's efforts in this direction to mandate like a default 24-degree option is set point is a very welcome move. But we see that almost 60% homes continue to run their ACs at below 24 degrees right now. So, similarly, when we talk about servicing of ACs on a periodic and a regular basis, we see only almost half of the homes do not get their AC serviced every year. So, poor servicing or installation practices can decrease the efficiency by almost 60% or so. So we really lose out on all the efforts in ensuring efficient stock unless we also ensure that the consumers are using it efficiently. So here we will, of course, need more innovative and ways of sustained campaigns or engaging with the consumers to ensure that they are using their appliances. And the point that you mentioned, Satish, about using fans along with ACs, and I think it's a very interesting one. Increasingly, we also see that, the buildings that are coming up, new building designs, they don't even have a provision for fans or sometimes even to keep coolers, even in the low cost housings. And that is worrisome because you're literally going to force the new occupants to just rely on ACs. So, and even though we know that a combination of passive cooling and AC technology can really bring down the thing. So, of course, we don't have representatives from that community here, but that is something that we will, increasingly need to engage with if we are to really, make a dent to the energy demand itself, and apart from engaging with the consumers. On the question on what should be the strategy for SLN program going forward, and as already talked about awareness, I would like to, from our IRIS survey, we observed that the awareness levels are pretty good when it comes to metro cities like Delhi or Mumbai, but at an all India level, we are seeing that just 25% of Indian homes say that they can identify the BEE star label, which was for us also a very surprising statistic. In urban households, urban areas, this is 40%, but rural areas is far behind. So we really need to find, and even though BE has been leading on this front and along with the state nodal agencies in spreading awareness, but we need to find how we can decentralize this awareness campaign and involve, the local presence of stakeholders like distribution companies or even local self-government, because I think we are talking about awareness about something which is not a dinner table conversation for most people. So unless you make it, you have a localized campaign, you have people talking to other people in the language that they can understand, we won't be able to reach, countryside and hinterland areas, or the consumers who will now contribute to the majority of growth in India's stock. And secondly, of course, the cost barrier is there. And here we need to experiment with more business models. Of course, the ESL model has been very successful in, literally transforming the lighting market in the country. We see almost 90% of Indian homes have at least one LED bulbs. And I think no other country might be in a position to, lay claim to such an achievement right now. But can we replicate such a success in case of fans and other technologies, or can we leverage other models like consumer financing? Can the private sector lead on this front? And finally, I think I will let Mr. Ranjan, Mr. Nalvaya, and Ms. Ray talk about this, but I also think there's an opportunity to leverage the power of analytics and digitalization that the smart meters have unlocked. And I mean, you really can customize messages for the consumers based on the consumption pattern, the load curves. You can segment the consumers into whether they are AC users or not, whether they are low consumption. And I mean, and that's something I think is again an area that a lot of work can be done going forward. I would stop here. Thanks.
Hey, thanks a lot, Shalu, for I think sharing some of very I think useful, interesting, and I would say pretty unique insights based on the survey results. And I think the important issue that I see emerging is that it gives a peek into some of the things that is very counterintuitive. And I think the one thing that you mentioned was the low level of awareness regarding SNL program. I think primarily in the rural areas, but also I would say semi-urban and tier 2, tier 3 cities, and which is probably I think surprising on one side, but maybe not as surprising on the other, because we know that we has been, I think, the advertising. They are also doing local language translations. They have advertisements on radios and other things. But India is a pretty big country, and many of, I think, the rural households do not own any appliances. So I think we have a pretty huge runway ahead of us. And how do we prepare, I think, these consumers to go for energy efficient appliances is going to be very important. So moving on, I would like to go to Mr. Jitendra Nalwaya. He is with BSES Yamuna Power Limited, and Simrat has already introduced him. So welcome, Mr. Nalwaya. Very nice to have you on the panel again. And you have heard both Anna and Shalu talk about the perceptions that consumers have related to some of the space cooling appliances, and also how SNL is being perceived by, I think, the consumer segments. And I know that BSES Yamuna Power, you have your own sort of like programs for fans and for ACs. So the question that I want to pose is that from a utility perspective, of course, it's very important that how do you forecast your load. And in that context, I think we are seeing every year that the peak power consumption demand continues to increase. So what are the current trends that you are observing in your summer peak demand? And then related to that, I think is how has the summer peak demand evolved in the past few years as the penetration for AC has increased, especially I think because we are talking about DC, which is the metropolitan area in India, which has the highest penetration of ACs. So utilities are really feeling the brunt of that. And then related to that is, of course, the question that I think if for your BYPL old AC replacement scheme that you have launched, what are, I think, some of the key learnings that you have seen from the scheme, and how can such programs be accelerated to uptake more like 5-star labeled ACs, or even going beyond 5-star? I know that ESL has kind of tried to launch that program in partnership with some of the utilities. So, so I think that is something that I would ask. And lastly, I would also say that because we all are interested in peak demand, where do you see, I think, the demand response program, time of usage rates? I know that there has been pilots that has been done on some of these things. So if you can share some of your learnings on that as well. So over to you, Mr. Nalwaya.
Yeah, thanks, Satishji, and thanks.
And again, maybe limit your interventions to, I would say, 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And good evening, everybody. Shaluji, Annaji, Abhishek, Dipanvitaji. As in regards of our peak demand, I think the AC, residential AC load is contributing to around 15 to 20%, if I say, And total AC in the, I mean, there are two stages where we get in the days. One is the afternoon time and other is the evening, I mean, night time kind of thing, where the 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. in the night. And what we see for the last 4 or 5 years, I mean, this trend is increasing at the rate of 7% CAGR kind of thing. I mean, this year was the exception because industrial and commercial load was not there. I mean, if it was there, I mean, the growth would have been the same. I mean, around 6 to 7%. But I mean, we can always plan those kind of scenario where we can have larger area. I mean, we know that the AC infusion is increasing as Shadows indicated. I mean, for the last 5 years, 80% have been done in the last 5 years only. But the more alarming feature which is there in the things, there are some pockets where the load growth have been increased and the peak load is increased by for 30%, 40%, or maybe by 50%. I mean, mainly in the residential area where the people are switching themselves from cooler to ACs, and where the congestion is also there, and the problem with us is the infrastructure and other kind of ability to augment or increase our infrastructure. What we see, I mean, we have run many programs in regards of smart appliances, efficient appliances, and all those kind of things. I mean, there are 2 or 3 kind of things which we normally see. One is the people are now, I mean, one is the price point. I mean, when somebody switches from cooler to 5-star AC or to AC, they just see the price point and they don't want to go to the 5-star in first phase. So they generally shift to 3-star or something like that. There's the one thing which is there. And second, as Anajit indicated, the retailer shop are also not having too many of 5-star options. They are having, because the sale is more on the 3-star kind of appliances, so they have more kind of 3-star options and all that. So one thing is that. Second thing is that people have purchased almost all the AC for the last 5 years only. So the replacement of this 3-star to 5-star or old star to 5-star may be difficult right now, because the replacement decision comes in India, especially in the residential sectors, comes when it goes something outwards or maybe the defective kind of thing. So under those kind of scenario, I mean, we have created awareness, but the awareness always remain to the 2 or 3 questions. I mean, one, we always say there is a power saving, there is an environment benefit, and all those kind of benefits are there. But then come, I mean, why we should go for the replacement right now? We may defer it after 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. So we have seen, I mean, we have carried out the, we are doing second phase of AC replacement scheme from old star to 5-star. We have seen last time, I mean, last year, where around 5,000 ACs were replaced. Now we are not getting too much of response, maybe due to COVID and other thing, but we may expect some kind of thing. But the other thing, which is fan kind of thing, I mean, if we have also carried out one fan scheme. I mean, BRPL Abhishek is also there. He will add afterwards. But the response in replacement of fan scheme in our area is also very low. I mean, the people don't want to kind of replace as of now. I mean, they know the benefit. They know that some kind of benefit will be there in their bill and all those kind of things. But still the intent of replacing those kind of fans is very low right now. So the major worry right now, which we are having, if I mean, under the congestion kind of environment where more and more buildings are coming, and the other kind of air cooling and other is absent. I mean, more people are switching from cooler to ACs, and maybe the 1-ton AC, 1.5-ton AC. So the load growth on those kind of areas will be very, 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 very high. And I mean, planning such kind of scenario will be very difficult on the area to area basis. I mean, we can always plan on the high level basis. So to cater all this situation, there are some programs, there are some pilots which we have carried out in the demand response, under the demand response program, where we have asked industrial and residential consumer to shed the load from their end on the demand response event, which we called during night hours, evening hours, or maybe afternoon hours. So it was just a kind of request where they can switch their load, or they can switch off their ACs, or they can increase the temperature of their ACs. We got good response. We got there were around 200 consumers were involved, and we got saving of around 50 megawatt in just 8 hours. So the response was very good. But at the same time, we are also looking into some kind of demand response where we can control AC temperature from our end, so that the temperature will be increased from 22, 24 to 26 degree during 1 hour or 2 hours. And overriding facility will be there always with the customers. And I mean, there was a study conducted by us with the 200 customers through survey. We found that if we do such kind of thing, there will be a lot of savings on the peak demand per se. If we do it in night hours, maybe I mean, if somebody switches, many people switch on their ACs at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. and if we do it 12 p.m., so there could be a good kind of saving on there. Apart from that, I mean, consumer behavior program is one of the program which BRP has also carried out, and we are also doing the thing, and we are getting very good response by the customers. I mean, a lot of queries are there in regards to uptaking green initiative, the uptaking how to be aware about the benefits of efficient ACs and all those kind of things. But again, the purchasing decision is still not too good right now even with the middle class. If I see in the Mayur Vihar area or Parpaganj area, it's still the people are postponing it, I mean, to kind of thing. We are also thinking of creating some kind of green rating for the customers. I mean, where we can rate the customer if somebody is using 5-star appliances or LED bulbs or 5-star fan, something like that. Can we give him some kind of rating of green consumer, something like that. So those kind of things we are doing from our end. And I mean, as I think that awareness is the main key which needs to be there, and this utility are closely connected with the customers. Every month their bill used to go from there, so it can be very easy. And once a smart meter will be there, I mean, we are in the process of installing smart meter. Those kind of analytics behavior will come very easily. I mean, what kind of uptake in there is one house, what kind of ACs are using, how many hours they are using the ACs, whether we can give some kind of suggestion to them, they can reduce their AC consumption time, or they can increase their temperature and all those things. So I think there's an interesting time for next 1 and 2 years. Let's see on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Nalwaya, for sharing your perspective. Abhishek, I have heard you speak, I think, in many other webinars also. And my questions are kind of similar to the ones that I posed, and I don't want to take up a whole lot of time. But if you can share your perspective, I think in terms of the point that Mr. Nalwaya also made, that this congestion issue and the investment, I think that utilities have to make and then try to recover based on the increasing cooling demand, which is leading to, I think, pockets of congestion. And what, according to you, has been sort of like the role of cooling that you see? And from a utility perspective, how do you think that the work that the utility is doing, the research community is doing, and maybe I think BESL is doing, how can we work in general a little bit closer together to come out with some more innovative solutions, awareness creation, some of the points that are coming through the remarks being made by speakers here. So over to you, Abhishek.
Thank you, Mr. Satish.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Satish, and a very warm welcome and good evening to everybody on the panel and all the audience. And very briefly, the context that we are trying to discuss is what is the impact of the cooling load on the overall load profile of the utility. B, I mean, through the panel discussion that we have heard, why is it the case that the people are not lapping up any initiative which is being given by ESL or DISCOM? Maybe it is a fan scheme, AC scheme, or maybe even a pilot basis DR scheme or whatever it is. Then you talked about the congestion and the impact of the heating and cooling load on the localized congestion. You added a space element to it and also a time element to it. Very pertinent questions were here. Now, first of all, the utilities like us, we have to understand our composition of the load. That means we have to decompose our annual load duration curve up to the consumer level. That's what we are trying to do now. And obviously, as Mr. Nalwaya told about, AMR, if you are having, that will help in the process, but that is not the limitation. We can do even without that. We are now trying to decompose a household load into appliance-wise segment. We are trying to work with IT Delhi on this and try to figure out what is it. But for the load survey that has been carried out by us and multiple utilities in Delhi, for example, 50% of the peak load during the summer, May to September, is cooling load. The cooling load comprises of AC, desert coolers, and fans. Okay. Now, if you talk about VSCS Rajdhani, our peak comes in night, and that too comes from the western part of our service area. And this is slightly different from Delhi as a whole. So Delhi peaks in the day mostly. This year was an exception due to COVID. And again, that was a testimony that is residential cooling load, because Delhi peaked in the night as well this time, and that was residential cooling load. So residential cooling load is the most important element in the peak demand that we do. Second interesting insight is, at the system peak level, this year there were certain distribution transformers which got overloaded, which was not the case earlier. For the same system peak last year, those distribution transformers were not or overloaded, but this time they were residential ones. Very insightful, and these are all kind of, you can draw a conclusion because of everybody is at home and all. So residential cooling in a nutshell is the main cause in a climate like Delhi, which is contributing to it. Now coming to what is residential cooling. So as correctly said by Shalu and Anna, everybody has talked about that. AC, fan, and desert coolers. Now we started with the fan scheme this year after we got a regulatory approval from the Commission. And we have a back of the envelope calculation that this is contributing to almost 500 megawatt during the peak load in Delhi. It runs for 10 hours a day and almost 10 months a year. So that is having a very, very important. So we started with the BLDC fan. So insights that we are trying to get from the consumers is what makes her go for a new fan. I mean, fan is there. The biggest problem is inertia. You and me, I mean, if I put myself into the shoes of the consumer, why would I, part with my fan which is working fine? I don't have much problem from it. There is significantly not very much dent on my electricity bill, and I have emotions attached to it. Maybe it came with my marriage gift or something. These are some practical problems which are there. Second is about the air conditioner. I had some interviews with the consumers, and we have done USDA supported behavioral energy efficiency program for the last 2 years now, and we are now expanding it also. We got the insight saying that, okay, why should I change my air conditioner? It is cooling very well, and I want to, every season, what I do is I refill the gas. That's it. I mean, I rarely look at the bill and what contribution it is going to make or not. Very rare. So there is inertia. Why should I part it with? Because I have to take out my split unit, my other unit, and my Windows AC also. There is a lot of problems. Even though we are providing the entire service door to door. So there is an inertia. We know that there is a problem here. We know that there is a challenge over here in terms of the greater cost. But no, I have the money. I'll pay the money. I'll get away. So that inertia has to be broken. So what are the ways and means? That is where apart from nudging, giving tips, and sending SMS messages, home energy reports, behavioral demand response, all those things are fine. But there something has to be done from the other angle also, which we propose to BEE also. Unfortunately, BEE is not here today. And we propose to the regulator and the MCD also. As we saw, 3-star ACs are the maximum. They have a 50% share in the AC market in Delhi, irrespective of license area, TPDDL, YPL, BRPL, whatever it is. Why can't we ban 3-star ACs and say that next 1 year or 2 years, I mean, you have to phase it out. Even using it will become illegal. You ask the service providers not to service them, not only the OEM, but also the generic service for registered, basically. Okay, and then you offer a scheme coupled with whatever is already going on. For example, in DRC supported scheme today, we offer up to 60% rebate on the MRP. And there is a price challenge. You can't find a cheaper AC than that, even on Amazon or otherwise. Otherwise, your money is returned back. That is the challenge we have taken. And this is the assurance and written assurance given by the participating OEMs, Daikin, LG, whosoever it is. Five of them are there. Similarly, in case, I'm sure in the case of YPL or TPTDR. So there is a push that you need to get rid of the older ones, 3-star ACs, and there is now a scheme. So you you want to get rid of it, fine, but there is a scheme going on. Please avail that scheme, replace your ACs, and get your EMI benefit. So that EMI scheme also, you may not have money to upfront pay. So zero cost EMI also being offered by the vendors, not directly by the discounts, but by the vendors. They are offering that, maybe through some card or some coupled with the schemes. A. B, when we did the feeder level analysis, we found out not only the residential, the daytime, there are certain institutionals, well-to-do, I won't name them. They are still using age-old AC, air conditioners, central air conditioners, or even they are using tube lights. I was surprised they are using tube lights, not the LED tube lights, the older tube lights. And there is a huge basement, or even in the office buildings, they are using that. Why can't we mandate all the offices to, they have to go green in terms of going for those lighting solutions as well as the AC solutions? They could be mandated from the government. You institutional, I'm saying institutional. Third is we talked to MCD. We said that why don't you offer property tax breaks to the consumers who gave an undertaking or they gave a certificate from a DISCOM that they have availed this subsidy and they have replaced all their fans, ceiling fans, for example. Very happy to share with you, like for example, BLDC fans are now available at a price very close to the AC induction motor fan. I mean, 1200 rupees or 1250 rupees or 1300 rupees is the price, I think, which is available in our scheme, the DRC sponsored scheme right now. There are 3 vendors participating in it. So, and we are working on with BEE, for example, how to reduce it further by waiving off the GST portion. That is also the suggestion in writing we have given to the BEE. Probably this will come from the next financial year. So that will again move the price point maybe below 2000 rupees. So A is you offer choices to the consumers, and B, you offer a push to the consumer. A through the regulation, B through the breaks in the tax, for example, property tax breaks. The MCD can tell them that, okay, if you bring me this certificate, I'll offer you 10%, 20% or whatever it is, one time. And that should be certified by the utility, for example. So when we install those fans in the homes of the consumer, they get a certificate from us. They have that installation certificate signed by us. So if these kind of initiatives can be undertaken, coupled with, like for example, you talk about the BDR, behavioral demand response, we have been sending HERs. Yes, that yields a lot of benefits. We have seen Oracle have been claiming 1%, 1 to 2%. We have seen up to 0.6% in the first year. Now we are expanding it, and we see no reason it should not go up to 1%. That is also a significant amount of my residential yearly consumption. 1% of residential energy consumption is a huge amount. It's a huge amount in Delhi DRPL only. Third is automated demand response, the final part. We already have done that temperature reduction through central schemes like Mr. Nalvaya was talking about. And instead of switch on and off the AC, this thing will work, but then it requires a retail market. It requires an incentive from the regulator, because we don't have a retail market over here in Delhi or in India, for example. So there needs to be some kind of incentive mechanism which would be provided to the consumer, which has to have a regulatory approval. So I rest my case over here. Over to you, Mr. Satish.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abhishek, for your intervention. I am going to come to Dipanvita, and so Dipanvita, again, I think you, of course, represent Tata Power Delhi Distribution Limited, and I'm pretty sure that the interventions that Mr. Abhishek and Mr. Nalvaya have made, I think will resonate with you. But maybe I think just a couple of cues that for your territory, I think do you have, I think, something that where you would like to add additionally to the point that has already been made? And also maybe I think what are some of the initiatives? I mean, we have heard about I think schemes for fans and for ACs, and then also behavioral demand response, automated demand response. What do you see? I think your experience has been. And lastly, I think one question that I am posing is that I think personally and at AEEE, we have been propagating this idea that just like our temperature displays sometimes on the AC, which tells you, I think, what's the set point temperature, not necessarily the space temperature or the room temperature. It just tells that that's the set point temperature, and room temperature can be very different from what it is showing there. Do you think that requiring some innovation to dynamically show what is the power consumption, I think at any point of time? So whether in inverter ACs, it could be 700 watts, and in really inefficient ACs, it could be 1.6 kilowatt or 1.8 kilowatt also. So I think the idea is that if you see, I think this type of immediate feedback, this could be very powerful drivers for not just nudging people, I think, to use the this thing efficiently, but also I think it realized the importance of I think the efficient appliance on a day in, day out basis. So would also like to hear, I think, what your take is on that. So over to you, Mr. Dipanvita, and we request you to limit your intervention to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, and good evening, everybody. And actually thanking all of you for taking up this, what you call the most important initiative of the hour. So if I may just quickly recap on what Mr. Ranjan and Mr. Nalwa have already mentioned. At Tata Power DDL, basically we would see our success in terms of selling 1 million bulbs with LED bulbs, which we started off a couple of years back. And then of course the replacement of AC scheme is there. And as Madam Shalu and Madam Anna have mentioned, we have done certain surveys, very focused surveys with our customer base, and we identified the barriers as to why people were not going for replacement of AC. Of course, as Mr. Ranjan said, the inertia part of it was there. Part of it was also lack of information about outdated ACs, etc. But gradually what we found out was that once we had the DRC back scheme, there was a lot of demand, and it is still there because we have come again with the scheme. And one thing what was limiting people, particularly in the higher end consumers who actually consume maximum of this, irrespective of pricing, or basically who are not aware of the price elasticity, or it doesn't make any difference to them. So in the high income segment, aesthetics was a very critical factor. So we gradually introduced a newer type of ACs, multicolored ACs, etc. And with many other brands. We started off with Voltas, and then we moved to Blue Star, and we're trying our best to tie up and offer like a retailer. When a customer goes to a retail shop, he gets a variety of brands before him. And what we are trying to differentiate as a DISCOM is that when he comes into our domain, online or offline, he actually gets that retailer feel, where he's able to access more than 1 or 2 brands with multiple kind of aesthetic offerings. So that one thing I think has stood us in good stead. Secondly, regarding the one more scheme, particularly in bringing about behavioral change, has been that we in-house follow is for the slum areas where they have very little cooling load or anything. We through our Abhas and brand ambassadors that we have in the clusters, we try to basically focus so that they get the best scheme at best possible rates through our OEM tie-ups, etc. And regarding the other consumers also, we try to give them the best of the schemes that is available. I think it's the same for almost same for all the 3 DISCOMs as of now. And regarding the passive cooling equipments like fan, BLDC fans we introduced 2 years back, but the response that we expected was not as good as the product. Reasons being that we did not have a variety of color or aesthetical offerings. And of course, fans come with a longer life cycle. And again, as Mr. Ranjan said, a lot of inertia, and people don't actually need to replace a fan.
So offering, say, maybe free replacement services going ahead could help us in peaking the demand for these items. One thing what we seeing that in terms of shaving the peak, what we need to definitely look at is the DR programs, and definitely with the time of day. But since 30 to 40% of my cooling load or AC load is coming from households who are actually not very price elastic, or they would prefer comfort over the extra units shelled out, not very environmentally conscious there. They take their own convenience to be paramount, which is of course fine. So they're probably incentivizing programs like we have abroad that could bring in some amount of behavioral changes. And of course, time of day tariff, which the regulator can introduce for the domestic sector, also may help us in shaving the peak demand. Coming to Dr. Satish, your question on the way forward that we see today is that one way definitely that customers compared to say 2-3 years back are more aware, and particularly post COVID they have become a more price conscious and environmentally conscious also. So what they are mainly looking at is a twin solution which can save their money as well as save the environment. And maybe like you said, some innovations. And in terms of innovations, there are a lot of home automation products or products which can actually help customers monitor, or apps or any other devices like that, particularly which help customers monitor appliance level consumption. So that probably, if we can promote them and get customers to use them, would I mean, those products again cannot be at a very high rate. They should be something which is affordable and attractive to consumers to use. And also raise, and one more thing that we've seen is there's a lot of demand for air purifiers. So we've come out with one scheme where we have introduced an AC with Sharp, Messrs. Sharp, a twin product which is an AC with air purifier. So these kind of products which are giving twin benefits to customers at a reasonable cost can actually help them in moving towards 5-star rated appliances. And also basically what we see is that as smart meter installation progresses and we are able to process the smart meter data and provide consumers with a 30-minute interval picture along with maybe what is the consequence of your consumption at this particular hour, this would on the apps or on a regular basis and get them hooked to looking at that kind of a thing. People today all the time look at news on their mobile apps or mobiles. So something of that sort, some gaming, some very innovative things which can hook in customers to constantly monitor their consumption, which and the data which is coming out from the smart meters can in the long run help the discom as well as save the environment and help the uh, companies in the cooling space. As it is, there is a lot of headroom for growth, so there is no capping on growth or loss of usage being feared here. What we are trying to do primarily is look at the environment and improve on that. So these kind of things, particularly home automation, getting the data from smart meters, or maybe even what Dr. Satish Kumar has just suggested, maybe a display. So home automation products give you some of the very they are right now very costly, very sophisticated ones which give you appliance level consumption also, but maybe bringing them to a more reasonable cost so that there is an economy of scale felt into this can help customers save on and change their behavior in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and Dipanvita. So I'm just looking at the time. There are some questions coming in. I'm thinking that a lot of questions are related to Bureau of Energy Efficiency and Bureau of Indian Standards, and I will probably try to extract one or two questions which I feel that maybe the panelists will feel comfortable asking, because some of the questions that I am seeing, I think it would be hard for any of the panelists to respond. But let me come back to both Shalu and Anna. I think what we have seen is that one observation point is that a lot of the programs that are getting run by the Delhi discoms, they of course have to be approved by the regulatory commission, and the boundary conditions are defined for these programs. But one of the common themes that we see is that many of these programs, if not all, are related to replacement category. And both Mr. Nalwaya and Mr. Ranjan talked about, I think, some of the issues and challenges, and even Dipanvita talked about that there are issues. I think the market becomes smaller, and if the AC is in a perfectly working condition, then why are they going to replace it? Because there is, I think, going to be an additional cost that they have to invest in. So I'm coming back to the question for both you, Anna and Shalu, that Anna, your work specifically, I think it was very heavily focused on the Delhi metropolitan areas. And was there anything specific that you want to bring out? Because I think all the three discoms are present here. Which I think hearing, I think what they are encountering, how they are approaching energy efficiency issues in their space conditioning appliance program. Anything that you would like to add? And also, I think from a new purchaser perspective, I mean, you have talked about that there could be, I think, some financing scheme. And we know that we have talked about on-bill financing and some of the other schemes which tend to work well, I think, with smaller, I think, priced items like maybe LED or even fans. But what can be done in terms of coming up with financing scheme in partnership with the distribution companies, which both of you believe can actually create some win-win situations?
So I can go first, and I think all three utility colleagues here have sort of rightly pointed out that replacement A is hard because most of the ACs that have been purchased are relatively recent, and we find that. So our work is based in Delhi, and we look at average age of AC is around 3 years. So indicating very new purchases, so we can see that issue happening. The other thing is, even with people who have those old inefficient ACs, they say it's working, why to replace it? Maybe some of the ideas here where better information about energy savings that they can achieve by replacement of ACs. Either smart meters can play a role here, or some kind of the Oracle kind of program where you get very specific consumer targeted information about energy savings they can get. So something that could help with that. Second point, it was very nice to see that there are also sort of fans focused programs, and Shalu hinted at that across the national level that cooling is quite heterogeneous. Our work was focused amongst wealthy neighborhoods of Delhi, and by what that means is that we surveyed areas that have above average AC penetration for Delhi, and we find that even amongst this relatively homogeneous wealthy neighborhoods, while about 44% own ACs, there are 20% households that just own a fan. So sort of even in the Delhi rich neighborhoods, the trend of rising AC ownership is very much visible and should be tapped into. When Satish mentioned sort of looking at first time purchases and role that financing or other programs that have been mentioned here can play a role. Hard to comment on specific financing tools, but I think probably people in the industry can speak more to this. But some things that where you probably get some some benefits if you're purchasing a more efficient ACs, either through the financing mechanisms or property benefits, property tax benefits that Mr. Ranjan mentioned. Some combination of that can help here. One thing I want to point out based on our work is the role of gender, which I think a lot of today's discussion has been around consumer behavior and how levels of awareness are low. We looked at how gendered is cooling. And what we find is often the decisions both about purchase and use are made by the head of the household, which is in most cases a middle-aged earning male member. Women have very little role to play in decision making. Secondly, we find that the levels of awareness amongst women are even lower. So they know even less about energy efficiency programs compared to the male members. There are female respondents know less about the type of AC and other appliances they know. So, type of AC, what's the rating, what's the capacity compared to the male respondents. So it sort of shows lower levels of technical awareness. And broader literature and other studies point out that if women are more empowered and are more aware, it does lead to more positive energy conservation behavior. So I think this aspect needs to be studied and discussed more about how we can address this gap.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Thank you, Anna. And Shalu, maybe I think you can come and maybe limit your intervention to 2 minutes, probably.
Sure. I will just like to, firstly, I'm very thrilled to hear all the, diverse interventions that all three utilities in Delhi are doing. We dedicatedly work on with UP, in UP, from a power sector reforms perspective. And of course, the discoms in UP and Delhi are, of course, poles apart in several respects. And it's great to see how, these interventions can also inspire discoms in other parts of the country. That apart, for the two, three ideas that I think that could be tried out, and since you're already, quite innovative, one is what we have also seen is people believe in what they see. And one of the reasons why people do not want to buy or replace their appliances because they probably believe that it's fine, right? So can we think of, say, creating at least some critical mass of examples by, say, using handheld devices, go to, some sample households and showcase that, okay, very simple interventions that, okay, this is the consumption that your current fan is using. If you replace it by a new fan, this is the savings that you will make. And of course, you will have to follow up with that household, whosoever are replacing, to showcase how much their bills have been impacted, and the ones who have already been converted, can they become your ambassadors for their own local areas? And in UK, they've been doing a meter initiative where they just basically voluntarily invite households to record their consumption. And so they basically send a meter, and then they record the consumption, and basis that they tell them, okay, this is how you're using energy, based on 1 or 2 days consumption. You don't need to have an appliance all throughout the year because people will stop looking at it after some time. Just 1 time or 2 time convincing power is good enough. Secondly, on the financing, what I think, from our survey, we asked people, would you want to use financing for new appliances that you buy? And almost like 1/6 of households said yes. Of course, we don't expect everyone is looking to get loans for their appliances. And in contrast, till now, very few appliances, people have actually used financing to buy new appliances, mostly in rural, urban areas. And part of the reason is lack of availability of finance. And again, those who can avail finance are the ones who have a credit history to show. And here, I think discoms have a very important tool. You have a payment history of all the consumers. Now, when you look at households who are looking to buy their first, fan or first fridge, first TV, if they want to avail of a loan, reputed financier like Bajaj Alliance or all will be willing to give them loans because they may not have enough, documents to prove that they will be able to pay back. So can discoms try out, come together with, say, agencies like Home Credit or Bajaj Alliance to say, okay, we will provide you credit history for the consumers, for those who approach you for the loans. And, it's something, obviously, the idea can be developed further. But I think in terms of financing, this credit history has been a big barrier. And if that can be overcome by different stakeholders coming together, that could be again interesting thing to check out. I'll stop here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Shalu. I think I will kind of bundle a few questions that have come from the audience as well. So I think some folks have asked for inputs that while we tend to talk about Bureau of Energy Efficiency quite a lot, and for obvious reasons, Bureau of Indian Standards also has a pretty important role to play. And because many times the standards and labeling program is kind of referring to the standards of BIS. So does I think when the utilities are sort of launching their own programs, so have you interacted with BIS officials or looked at BIS standards? I think especially where maybe some of these things are voluntary or not existing, and if you want to share something on that. The second question that has come through from the audience for the utilities is, I think Mr. Ranjan talked a little bit about it, but the question is that we can understand that the pickup of any replacement AC program could be limited, but they are saying that would, I think, the different utilities share their experience in terms of the fan program, and they are requesting if all the utilities can share what is the total number of ACs or fans that has been sold under the various programs over the years, just to get some idea about how large these programs have been. So I think there are a couple of these. There is another kind of comment that, and this goes back to, I think, the comment that some people have been making, that there could be some green consumer or property rated program. And one comment is that based on the quality of the home, if it is very well insulated, if it has passive cooling strategies, is there a way that more, I think, something can be done by the utilities when working with these kind of consumers? So I'm going to kind of lob it back to maybe the three Delhi Discom representatives, and also what you heard from Anna and Shalu, if you want to pick up any of those threads in the latest round of inputs that came from them. So maybe Abhishek, I'll start with you, and if you can share your perspective on some of these things.
Thank you, Dr. Satish. Hope I am audible.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, the question somebody asked in the audience about the utilities. What is the uptake of the program, this program, the replacement program, the AC replacement and the fan replacement program? The AC replacement program has been running, I think this is the third year or second year, I think, in our area, which it has been running. Second summer season, it went by just now in summer of 2020. We have so far, I think, out of 10,000 which were allowed in the scheme initially, we have crossed 7,000 now. But it's also not, because all the ACs are offered under the replacement scheme only. With all these 7,000 ACs are under replacement, and the other older ACs, whatever was replaced, have been, disposed of in an environmental friendly manner. We have the videos and audios and certificates, etc. for them. Now, yes, there is a offering against each of these. There's salvage value being provided to the consumers. That is of the interest to them, due to which they also come for the replacement. In the fan scheme, which is BLDC fan scheme, started this year only, but we had ESL AC fan scheme also, that was 50 watt. Now it is 27 watt. In total, we have crossed 5,000 fans. Now, in the current fan scheme, we have up to 3 fans offered under replacement in the per consumer, per CA number. And if you are purchasing new fans also, that is also available. So up to 2 new fans you can avail of. But at least 1 has to be replaced out of 3. And maximum 3 can be replaced, that's not a problem. Now, replacement, what we are offering is, we got to know from the consumers there is a hassle. If you just give them the fan, and who is going to hang them and take out the older one? So we provided them end-to-end solution. Whatever price they are paying, that is home delivery service. They just have to call. Somebody will go there, bring down the old fan, hang the new fan, and take back the older fan with them. So this door-to-door service complete end-to-end. Similarly in the AC also. So that is very helpful for the consumer. Otherwise, it can't take off. Similarly, we are working with the societies and the institutions where in societies where you have large community centers or the common area. Why don't they, and they are off-taking bulk in bulk the fans under the residential scheme. These are residential societies. There are builder flats where they are offering this connection to the residential. So what I'm trying to say is the 50,000 fans which have been offered right now under the new scheme, and the offtake in this 1 year has been hardly 4,000 and 3,000 in the BLDC fan scheme. Overall, including AC fan of the ESL was 5. Now you also talked about BIS and whether the utilities talk to the BIS about the standards which are there, which determine the star leveling program of 5-star. So frankly speaking, we have not been in touch with the BIS. We believe what BEE tells us this is 5-star. We simply say in our contract or the tender document that whatever BEE certifies as 5-star is third level. But final thing which I would like to submit is, why at all we are producing a less than 5-star labeled program? So what we have seen is we produce 3-star. I mean, consumer is not going by star labeling. I mean, he's going by the price mostly. So 3-star level devices, they are less pricey compared to 5-star. Therefore, they are going for 3-star. Okay. Now, why at all to produce 3-star? Why can't we produce affordable 5-star? So the problem is solved at the root itself. And this unstarred, I mean, forget about 3-star. I mean, many of the ACs which are running in our household is more than 10 years old. Imagine that. And they're all unstarred ACs. So we have to bring that out of the. So the point I'm trying to make is, let's address the problem at the root. Why to produce 3-star at all? It should be only 5-star. Over to you, Dr. Satish.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ranjan, for those comments. Over to you, Mr. Nalwaya, for your remarks, and please limit it to 2 minutes. We would like to wrap up on time. We are just closing it on our scheduled 1.5 hour session.
Yeah, thanks a lot. The numbers in BYPL in regards of replacement of ACs were around 4,000 last year and 2,000 now, against 10,000 again, which is approved by the DRC. So we are almost to the 6,000 as of for the last 3 years. Fans, again, the numbers are 4,000 approximately, because it's about the ESL scheme. We have just started the BLDC scheme recently. In regards of, you indicated, I think BIS, Abhishek has already indicated, we have not been referring BIS as of now, because we are just adhering BE schemes. One thing I think Anna has indicated about the decision-making person, I mean, who is the basically male household person in the middle kind of society. But what we have initiated one green division, green society project for around 5 to 6 housing societies, and we have differentiated between those. I mean, in 3 societies we were giving awareness to only housewives and children. I mean, children's above between 9 standard and above. And for the 3 societies, we were just giving the awareness towards from SMS, WhatsApp, and all that. What we have seen the uptake in the other 3 societies where the awareness was given to children and housewives were very, very, very high in compared to what we were giving WhatsApp and all kind of bills and all those kind of things. So obviously, I mean, when we go more awareing about the school children's and like BRPL has also initiated, we also initiated the program. So it will have a larger impact on the society as a whole when those kind of decision making will come into picture in regards of efficient appliances. Again, the price point will be issue. I mean, that's the thing. Other thing which Abhishek has indicated, I mean, likewise, I mean, for the car, when we are saying we will not go for the BS4 or BS2 or something like that, why we should have for 3-star at all? I mean, we can always have 2 years ban, or I mean always kind of ban. I mean we can have 5-star, and when the purchase and the volume will be large, and the obviously the economics will come down. I mean on kind of appliances. That's all from my side. Thank you.
I think these are interesting comments. We are hoping to have a Rama representative, I think, in our second part of the discussion, and I'm pretty sure I think they will have their own perspectives and views. But before we wrap up, I do want to come back to Dipanvita and hear your views on some of these things as well as some of the numbers. If you can share, I think that would be great.
Yeah, coming to the numbers, basically, we had AC schemes 2 years back. So once we had the AC replacement scheme, we sold around 8,000 ACs. And last year, we had a tie-up with OEMs for discounted ACs. So there we sold around 3,000 ACs. And this year, again, we are back with the DRC's approved scheme. And we've already, like in COVID time, sold around 700 of them, and all of them have been online sales with the door-to-door support. Regarding fans, we have been running the BLDC program now, only with one manufacturer so far, and we've sold around 3,000 fans. And I guess, as Mr. Nalwa and Mr. Ranjan said, why manufacture three-star ACs at all? And there are a lot of customers who actually get assembled ACs from local dealers also, which are extremely inefficient. And we actually need to try and break this kind of a market with a nicely priced segment so that it is attractive to all the customers in future. So I guess my takeaway would be that banning use of non-inefficient ACs, and also bringing the price down along with manufacturers could help take this market to a better height.
Okay, so thank you very much. I think we are like 4 minutes past our scheduled time. So I do want to take this opportunity to thank each one of you for your very, I think, insightful comments, sharing of your own experiences of your work that I think your organization has been doing. And on a very important topic, cooling is a pretty important and a relevant topic. I think generates a lot of interest. I think it's a major area of focus of course, for India Cooling Coalition. And before I again hand over to Simrat, I want to take this opportunity to all of you, Anna, Shalu, Mr. Narwaya, Mr. Ranjan, and Ms. Ray for spending your time with us and sharing your perspectives, and also information about your programs and your insights about how can we work together to make India adopt more energy efficient and sustainable cooling solutions. Over to you, Simrat.
Thank you, Dr. Satish.
Thank you, sir.
To wrap up, I would also like to extend my gratitude to all the panelists for taking out the time for this webinar and for a very stimulating discussion, which we were all listening to very closely. It was interesting and useful to learn from all the panelists their insights and perspectives on what are some of the main barriers that hinder the adoption of star-labeled appliances, and also some of the recommendations for ramping up the uptake of efficient space cooling appliances, including the role of innovative pricing, digitalization, feedback mechanisms, and marketing, which were particularly interesting. I would also extend my thanks to all the participants who tuned in for this webinar. We hope to see you all in the part 2 of this webinar series next week, where we take forward today's discussion with representatives from policy as well as industry. And once again, thank you very much and have a very good evening.
Thank you, Simrat.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening and good